Hey everybody, welcome back to the Glom Initiative's YouTube channel. I'm happy to be back. Got some interesting and clever topics to discuss, and today we are going to take a journey down the road of depression. It happens to be Mental Health Awareness Month right now, so I think that it is a useful topic to discuss. I think plenty of us can relate to and identify with the challenges of depression, how debilitating the symptoms can be, how destructive the mood swings and lack of energy, and just the intense feelings of melancholy and just despair. It's really challenging sometimes when we're in that dark place. And so I wanted to have a conversation about ways in which we can identify that we're on that road, and ways that we can manage those symptoms, and ways in which I've helped myself and clients move from that place of despair and darkness to more optimism and more positivity and more hope, to reclaim parts of their lives that depression tries to steal from us. So when we talk about depression, I've already covered a little bit of the despair that comes from the mood swings, and how it robs us of optimism and opportunities in our lives, because we lose the motivation to get up and engage with the people and the things that we know ourselves to be passionate about and enthusiastic about. And so it's difficult to even recognize who we are when we are in that depressive, melancholy mood. It's called dysphoria. The clinical term for it is dysphoria, the ability or the lack of ability to find joy and pleasure from typical things that would bring us those positive emotions and feelings and affects. So that dysphoria is very difficult to shake. And so one of the things that we can do, first of all, is recognize that we're sliding into that slump of depression. And sometimes it's difficult to identify where we are on that continuum, because we get so busy and so caught up with our tasks and roles and responsibilities, and overwhelm can quickly shift into depression without us even recognizing that it's happening. So again, the first thing I think that is useful is for us to take a moment and pause and determine whether or not, is this overwhelm, is this sadness, or is it something else? And just because something is wrong doesn't mean that something's wrong with you. Depression is a heritable disease, meaning that it is genetic. There are genetic features and components to it. So it's very likely that if you are experiencing symptoms of depression, someone in your family also has had those experiences as well. Your mother, your father, your grandfather, your grandmother. It's highly heritable, number one. Number two, sometimes depression can be situational, either triggered by a trauma or a negative experience or a disappointment. And sometimes it is based on something physiological, so brain chemistry. In general, all three of those things play a role, and it's difficult to decipher how much of this is genetics and how much of this is physiological based on the individual, and how much of this is situational based on what's going on in the circumstances of your life. But the bottom line is all three of those things play a role. So again, let me say, just because you identify and recognize that something is wrong, it doesn't mean that something is wrong with you. So recognizing that you may be sliding down the continuum of clinical depression is the first step. The next step is to accept that this is the current state. Have a reality check, like, okay, I'm in a place that is becoming dark or that is already dark, and it is what it is. Denial doesn't help us move forward. Until we're willing to accept that a situation or a state is what it is, we cannot problem solve and strategize and figure out a plan to move from that place. So it's important to acknowledge, okay, this is where I sit today. Whether that's in a place of deep clinical depression, whether that's in just, I'm starting to feel a little unlike myself, or somewhere in between, almost depressed, as Shelley Carson would say, one of my professors at Harvard. So again, just be willing to accept this is where I am at this moment in time. And then the next thing we can do is commit to things that will help us move beyond our current state. So just after you accept this is where I am, and I'm not where I used to be, but it doesn't mean that I have to stay here, we can commit to practices and behaviors that are going to help us move out of that state of melancholia, move out of that state of dysphoria, and move more towards joy, happiness, pleasure, or at least baseline. And so how do we make those commitments? What are those commitments that I'm talking about? I believe that the number one thing you must do if you're feeling depressed is move your body. Exercise. Why? There's so many different benefits, but the number one benefit of exercise is it rearranges and increases the neurotransmitters that we have naturally in our brains. And because depression is an imbalance of that chemical chemistry, the first and easiest thing that we can do is get out and move our bodies, or get in and move your body. Practice yoga, go for a run, lift some weights, do some push-ups, do some jumping jacks, skip rope, whatever it is to get your heart pumping and get those neurotransmitters going. Try that and see what kind of effect that has. That's before you go talk to anybody. That's before you even have a conversation with friend, family, or clinician. Move your body and see if you can begin to manage your mood that way first. The next thing you can do is begin to think about your strengths and what you have lost based on the melancholy mood that you've been in. Because again, depression gives us a cognitive distortion. So we're not seeing things clearly, and because we're not thinking about things clearly, our emotions are not clear. So if you can almost trick yourself into reminding yourself what you're good at, what you love, what you're passionate about, you can hijack those negative self-thoughts and that negative rumination pattern. So, for example, you might think, oh, I'm worthless, nothing I do is going to work, everything I try I fail at. Begin to chip away at that cognitive distortion by reminding yourself of what you're good at, or reminding yourself of the people who love you, or reminding yourself of the things that you love and are passionate about. Even if you don't have the energy to get up and go do that thing, just the ability to shift the internal dialogue and narrative from the negative to the positive is going to give you just a little bit of window, glimmer of hope. And then the last thing you can do to help you begin to shift out of depression, whether it's clinical or whether you're almost depressed, is ask for help. Hire someone who is a professional clinician, coach, consultant, life strategist like I am. Get professional guidance and help. Yes, we need support from friends, families, loved ones, our peers, but you need to talk to someone who has some training and experiential knowledge in, number one, the concepts and the constructs and the clinical diagnosis, but who can help guide you and support you along your journey out of that state. And once you work with that person, as long as you have good synergy with them, then you learn those skills. So further on in life, if this cycle happens again, and with depression, it typically does, then you have, you're armed with tools that you can apply. So you're not always reliant upon someone else, and you can catch the symptoms early and often. So I hope these tips have been helpful for you. I know it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Depression is a real thing, and a lot of us deal with it. So let me know in the comments if this is something that was helpful for you, and I'd love to hear your feedback. Thanks a lot. Do you have the courage to show up for your own life? To realize your vision and unlock your potential, contact GLOM Initiatives at 757-550-4987 or glominitiatives.com.